Let's go through the basics of Medio together. I'm Thusan, a developer on the Medio team. Medio is a visual programming language, and the first thing you'll see after creating a project is the canvas. Here you can add and connect visual components called nodes. If I want to move quickly, I can type in a prompt to generate the nodes. Right now, I'll add them manually so that it is easier to follow along. To add nodes, I can either press space or click on the plus button in the toolbar. In the node palette, you can see all currently available nodes. Alright, I want to get the weather data for Oslo, and to do that, I'm going to use the fetch node. With the fetch node, I can make a request to a web API that will serve me the weather data for Oslo. I already have an URL, so I'm going to paste this into the text box here. The rest of the inputs on the fetch node are correctly set up. I am now ready to click play on the node, which will trigger the function. After triggering, I now have data in the output of the function. This I can inspect by either hovering or clicking the preview dot. I can also pin this preview node to the canvas by dragging it. I also want to be able to respond to a web request. To do that, I use the HTTP endpoint node. This node is an event type node. In this case, the node will be triggered when a request to this URL is made. To respond to the web request, I will use the respond to request function. To trigger this function after receiving a web request, I will connect them using the green arrows. In Medio, green arrows dictate the order in which nodes are triggered one after another. Alright, let's make sure the endpoint works by responding to a request with hello world. As you can see in the executions panel, we now have a new execution, which was the request made to the endpoint. Okay, now let's change the flow so that we respond to the request with data from the weather API. Alright, let's make sure this works. To make this easier to read, I will respond to the request with an HTML page. I've already prepared the HTML page, and I will use the template node to populate it with live data. I'm pasting in the HTML page here, and by clicking on this button, I can see the full HTML page. As you can see, I'm only interested in showing the temperature and the wind speed. I'm selecting the latest execution that triggered the fetch node to view the data. In the preview, I can see that the temperature and wind speed are a part of the current weather object. By right-clicking on it, I can access the field. To further select the temperature and wind speed from the current weather object, I have to create two new waypoint nodes. To create a waypoint node, I can either right-click on the arrow, or I can double-click on it. In here, I write in the key I want to select. I now have a new output I want as the input to the respond to HTTP request function. To make sure the browser renders this as HTML, I also have to include a content type header. Alright, let's see if this worked. And now we also see a new entry in the executions panel. After a flow is executed, I can inspect the data at every step of the flow. So for instance, I can see the temperature after it's been mapped from the current weather object, and I can also see the HTML page that was created in the editor. On the left side, you can find your modules and your packages. You can add packages to your project by clicking on Packages and this button right here. The nodes associated with each package will be available in the node palette. On the right side, you can find more panels that are useful as you continue building. By clicking on the Add Panel button, you can access all of them. For instance, the Problems panel is helpful when you run into errors. If you find yourself stuck, we're happy to help you on our Discord server. We also have a documentation page. You can access both of them down here. Good luck building with Medio.